Hi everyone. So I'm Prabjot Kaur. I'm currently a sophomore and I'm majoring in forensic science. So while I was in this class, something that stuck out to me the most was memory. I've also taken a psychology course in high school. It was AP Psychology and Psych 101 in John Jay. And both times I was very interested in memory and how memory works and the science behind it. And that's why I decided to do research on false eyewitness testimonies and how memory is very flawed. So, eyewitness testimonies are very important in cases as they can make or break a case, and yet the details could be wrong and really cause detriment to an entire case. So, while I was in my high school psychology class, I was also researching this company that was helping aid people who were falsely um, identified and who lost many years of their lives being in jail because they were falsely identified by eyewitnesses who claimed that they remembered all the details of the events that occurred. So that's why I am researching eyewitness testimonies, how memory is flawed, and how memory can be tainted and it's very impressionable as it can be changed very easily. So, eyewitness testimony is very important in cases as if there's someone claiming to have seen you at the scene of a crime, you're definitely going to be a suspect. And yet, they could get their details wrong, and that can cause someone a grave amount of pain because they can lose a lot of time within the case, even though they weren't there and the details were just wrong. Um, So, a lot of the procedures that I was looking at focused on memory cues and retrieval cues, and how, based on the questions that are posed by first responders and police officers who are trying to conduct an investigation, eyewitnesses can accidentally, not intentionally, but accidentally, start messing up the details that occur because they're overly confident and they claim to remember every single detail that occurred, even though it could be incorrect. So one of the main, so basically two of the main things that I was finding was the reliability of retrieval tools and how different questions can create different impressions, and change blindness, where witnesses won't notice tiny details when they're being asked about it afterwards. So one of the procedures that I found, psychological procedures, was called predicting accuracy in eyewitness testimonies with memory retrieval effort and confidence. So within this procedure, they had 24 participants watch a film and they were asked questions about the events that occurred afterwards, and they were also asked about the level of confidence they had while watching the film and answering the questions about how well they were and how correct they were in remembering details. And this chart over here that I included shows how people who claimed to have the most confidence were mostly incorrect, and people who had less confidence and weren't able to answer the questions as accurately were less incorrect. Even though they were incorrect, they were still less incorrect than someone who was highly confident. And a person who is highly confident in answering questions about details can always make a mistake and cause detriment to an investigation. The next procedure that I saw that stuck out to me was about change blindness and eyewitness testimony. This is also similar to the selective attention phenomenon, where eyewitnesses will fail to notice important details, and then it'll create multiple stories within multiple eyewitnesses, and investigators will be confused on who's actually telling the truth. So, within this procedure, there were 80 participants who were watching a film of a burglary, and they were told to remember the content and then they would be asked questions afterwards. And while watching the film, over 60% of them, when asked questions about it afterwards, didn't notice that the burglar's identity was changed and details about his identity and what he was wearing were changed. And because they didn't notice this, they falsely identified the burglar at the end. And it just goes to show how people can mistakenly identify the wrong person and cause detriment in a case, in an investigation. So, in conclusion, with the research that I was doing with different articles and different procedures, I realized and concluded that eyewitnesses can be very incorrect, and it can be due to different circumstances, such as the witnesses discussing details together, and this causes multiple witnesses to have different stories, but also based on the original stories that they have, they'll start to change their story to match other eyewitnesses, and just it'll cause a big problem because they can all be trying to match each other and yet they can all be wrong. In addition, the leading and impersonating questions that can be asked by first responders and investigators with the retrieval cues can also cause issues because it can cause eyewitnesses to change their story as well and create memories that weren't there to begin with and just have incorrect details about events. And lastly, eyewitnesses who are overly confident in themselves and the details that occurred tend to make the most mistakes, and memory is never 100% accurate, no matter what we claim or think that it could be. Um, Memory is very flawed, so it's important in eyewitness testimony cases, but it shouldn't be used solely. There should definitely be other pieces of evidence that are taken into account besides just eyewitness testimony, because it can be a great benefit, but it can also be very detrimental to an investigation. So, thank you for reading my presentation and learning about eyewitness memories and eyewitness testimonies. I hope you learned something interesting. Here are the sources and articles and procedures that I was using. Thank you.